Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have a very special guest. I consider this gentleman to be a legend. He has been on the scene for over 50 years and has worked with many greats from Jackie McLean to Sonny Rollins, McCoy Tyner, Herbie Hancock, and Max Roach, to name a few. He is a trumpeter, educator, composer, and in addition to all of those things, he's just a super cool guy. Please welcome to Jazz Talk, Mr. Charles Tolliver. How are you, sir?
Hey Preston, how are you doing?
Good, man. It's so good to have you on the show today. And Charles, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you've been on the scene for over 50 years. You're one of the greatest trumpet players of all time. And I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about your humble beginnings, how all this started. I understand that you are from Jacksonville, Florida, sir.
I am.
Yeah. Tell me about your humble beginnings, how all this started, how you got involved in music.
I had a idyllic childhood, Preston. What I mean by that is Jacksonville was half rural, half um, you know larger city than the surrounding um towns in that part of
Hmm.
northern Florida at that time.
Hmm.
Actually, I can remember they had a drive-in liquor store.
Are you kidding me? Never
Yeah.
heard of anything like that before. Wow.
Yeah, they were pretty hip there, and they had um, a nightclub that the headlining acts at the time would come through Jacksonville. It was called a two spot,
The two spot? Okay.
and because I used to hear my folks, talk about that, and I from my birth till 10 years of age, that was home. And around the age of 8, my dear grandmother got me a cornet.
Mm.
That started me really in earnest, in
Yeah.
music. So the rest just fell in place after that. And certainly it really got going, once the family immigrated here to New York City.
Yeah. Yeah. So after Jacksonville, Florida, you guys moved to New York, and you basically are self-taught, correct?
Totally.
Okay. Okay. Now, during that time period, even before college, because I know you went to Howard University, were you playing in like local bands as a teenager, Charles?
I was always looking for wherever it was the hippest, baddest guys around.
Yeah.
Um, in my, you know, teen years, by 12 years old, I had already sought out, the the youngsters who were playing, this music, and
Hmm.
rehearse, and we play. Incidentally, where they have the Charlie Parker Jazz Festival now
Hmm.
in Harlem at Mount Morris Park or Marcus Garvey Park, whichever is your persuasion
Yeah.
of the name for that park. I
Hmm.
remember that on Sundays, they would let us go there on the corner of Fifth Avenue and 124th Street. They even had a piano that they had out there. I mean, the parks were really, you know, benevolent, with youngsters who wanted to play music. And so those were my beginnings as a child and teenager, here in New York.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, man. So you make your way to Howard University, and you were a pharmacy major.
So the story behind that is in my senior year in high school, I got a job with a local pharmacy right up the street from our our apartment where the family was living.
Hmm.
Actually, it probably was the only black-owned pharmacy at that time. in Harlem. Actually, it was an apothecary because they were more. Um, and what got me interested was as I would sit and wait for them to give me meds to deliver to the local folks. I watched them actually mix the medicine, you know, with
Yeah.
the anvil, pass
Right.
that.
Right.
And I thought to myself, wow, people live or die how well they mix that medicine.
Mhm.
There was no pushing of a button, and all of a sudden, you know, a prefabbed bottle of medicine would could be just dispensed, you know, to a
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah.
In those years, I mean, you really had to mix, you know, the medicine. So that got me really interested, and I was accepted at Howard University's famous College of Pharmacy, and I took my trumpet along with me, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say that I spent as much time in the fine arts building as I did, you know, in my pharmacology classes. And Washington became a watershed for me because I really did a lot of shedding and on that trumpet, and uh, was befriended by a lot of really super musicians in Washington, D.C. at that time, some of whom were to come to New York and really be big players in this art form.
Hmm.
Yeah, D.C. was and Howard University was a great period. You know.
Let me ask you, Mr. Tolliver. During that time period, as you said, Washington D.C. was definitely a hotbed for jazz. Were you going around, maybe hitting clubs, checking out some of the guys? Because I know Miles, Coltrane, and a lot of the other guys, they would play at certain places. I think the Howard Theater and some of the other places that are in Washington D.C. Were you going around checking out a lot of concerts during that time when you were in college?
Yeah, I mean, you know, every night wherever there was something going on.
Yeah.
Um, I think that simultaneously during those years, there was I can't think of the name of the club now, but I know that it was next to the what was called the Negro Musicians Union,
Okay.
uh, where they would rehearse, and you know you could, I guess, join the local union there in Washington D.C. But right next to it was the main club for bringing in, you know, the headliners in this music at that time.
Yeah.
And John Coltrane would come there, and
Was it Bohemian Caverns?
oh, it was another name. I
Okay.
can't I can't think of it at the moment.
Okay.
The It Club sort of comes into mind, but I think that might be the club that's in L.A. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
Same sort of thing. And of course, there was the Bohemian Caverns, which had just started as well,
Hmm.
Taylor, and so, and there was another one on 7th Street where I would go and see, some of the well-known locals, and so it was filled with just a lot of music, and Art Blakey and Art Silver, and all those people would come through the Howard Theater,
Oh,
as
that's
well.
beautiful. That's
Uh,
beautiful. So after Howard, you make your way to New York, and I'm thinking about that time period, Charles, the '60s. A lot of trumpet players were emerging at that time. You think about Lee Morgan, Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw, and Dizzy Gillespie talked about a young trumpet player that he liked named Charles Tolliver. He had glowing things to say about you. Now you're on the scene, getting started. How did you hook up with Jackie McLean, man? One of my favorites.
oh, I guess the Almighty was looking down on me. I was
Yeah.
at a jam session in a very famous place at the time called the Blue Cornet in
Hmm.
Brooklyn, and came down off of a jam, and a gentleman who is actually still alive today. His name is Jim Harrison, and he was at the bar, and he said, "Oh yeah, okay, Jackie McLean might be looking for a trumpet player."
Yeah.
And I created the Jackie McLean fan club, so I said, "Wow," because us kids, man, we ate and slept Jackie McLean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and anybody else that was on those records of his, especially Donald Byrd.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I did go and see Jackie where Jim Harrison told me to go check him out, and I guess in about 6 months or so, um, I went again to see him, and he said, "Okay, come to my house." And well, the rest is history. There was a little place called Slug Saloon, which
Oh
had
yeah.
become very famous towards the end of the '60s and early '70s. And he was asked by the owner of the club, because he was only living 1 block away from the club down on the Lower East Side,
Hmm.
called Alphabet City in New York. And so this was sort of like my beginning with him. And he had a band that he had put together, and we went in there and played on Sawdust on the Floor, and that opened up Slugs. We were the first band to play in there.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and that band had myself along with Jackie, along with Larry Willis on piano, John Orr on bass, and Billy Higgins on drums. And he worked that particular band for a little bit.
Hmm.
And then uh, he took me into the studio and gave me my first recording.
Was the first recording you did with him, was it Jackknife?
No, it's time.
It's time. That's right. That's right. But one of my favorite tunes by you, and you and I have talked about this, and I think you guys did it on Jackknife, I believe, was on the Nile.
Right.
That
Hmm.
is, man, that is like one of the baddest cuts I've ever heard. I mean, I'm like, man, who wrote this? I went back and checked it out, but it was beautiful. And of course, you had a long tenure with Jackie, who's was one of the greats for sure.
The
Don't you want?
that first recording, it's time.
Uh-huh.
um, is very momentous because um, Jackie, he had already done Destination Out.
Right.
Uh, he wanted to, you know, stay in that vein, but not too far out, you know.
I got you.
Um, so I had to, you know, wear two hats, because all of us kids, we, besides eating and sleeping someone like Jackie McLean, that was also the case with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. So
Hmm.
we were all playing in that vein. And that record, It's Time, had a mixture of things. And it's just about my favorite recording of anything I've ever done, because uh, Alfred Lyons, he had a way of rehearsing whatever band he either suggested or put together himself for each of his recordings. And uh, when we got to this famous studio where all the rehearsals were done,
Was it Rudy Van Gelder?
no, 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 it was um, a small studio uptown,
Okay.
around 89th and Broadway, and I think it was called Lynn Oliver. Yes,
Mm.
it was the place where all musicians would go and rehearse. mostly for the jazz record dates at that time.
Yeah.
And when I got there, Alfred Lyons and Frank Wolf were there sitting and waiting for the band to assemble, and Alfred had his stopwatch in his hand.
It must swing. It must swing.
Well, yeah, to time each tune, so he
Yeah.
could, you know, how long this record date was going to be, and then in walked um, Roy Haynes.
Oh wow.
I'm saying to myself, you got to be kidding me. And then in walked Herbie Hancock and a brand new bassist like me on the scene, Cecil McBee. All of
Oh,
this, all of this becomes our first uh, big time recording, and
amazing.
that record is, and I believe Blue Note has just reissued it um, as what they call Tone Poet Series
Hmm.
on vinyl. It's just been released.
Okay.
So I just wanted to.
Oh man, thanks for that history. I mean, that's good to know because I'll probably have to pick that up myself. I mean, I have most of Jackie's stuff, so I need to check because it's been a while since I played some things. But I wanted to ask you about your debut recording, Paper Man. I think you did that in 60, 68 or 69. Man, I love that recording. You had Herbie Hancock and I believe Joe Chambers, some people on that. What was the meaning behind that? What were you trying to say, Charles, behind Paper Man?
Yeah. So the title Paper Man really came up while I was working with Gerald Wilson's orchestra in LA
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
couple of years earlier. And I had been fooling around with, you know, big band stuff, arranging it, my first beginnings. And I happened to be fortunate enough to be working in Gerald Wilson's band in LA for about a year. And I brought this tune, Paper Man, to him, and he graciously put it on the record date, live,
Wow.
live and swinging at Marty's on the Hill, and that was one of the big nightclubs there.
Mhm.
And this was a live recording. So when I decided to do my first recording under my name, I brought this tune in for the small group. I mean, it was created for a small group anyway, and well, Paperman, uh, I don't know if I ascribed any particular meaning to it. It just came up as a title, for the
Yeah.
tune.
Yeah.
And on that first record date, of course, as you mentioned, I had Herbie Hancock, but also Ron Carter,
Mhm.
along with Joe Chambers in the rhythm section. And on part of the record date, Gary Bartz on alto.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Gary's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Now, I guess a year or two later, you form a record label. You and your friend Stanley Cowell, Strata East. Tell us about that. What is Strata East? How'd you come up with that name, and what made you decide to form your own record label, man?
Well, there
And
wasn't an
so early, and so early in your career too. You know.
well, there wasn't an idea to form the record label at first.
Uh huh.
So the route for a young player during that time, it had an unspoken formula, but it was there.
Hmm.
If you got chosen by one of the guys who were already in, uh, and you got on a record with Blue Note Records or Prestige or Milestones or you know any of the other independent labels at that time, eventually you probably would get a leader date yourself.
Mm.
But in the case with Blue Note, since I had done a number of recordings after I broke in with Jackie McLean, that would have been the route, but Alfred Lyons sold he got out of the business and retired in 1966 or so.
Mm.
And that route was sort of a vacuum put there. And so Stanley Cowell and I met for the first time at the first rehearsal for the new quintet that Max Roach formed in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we bonded. Uh, we were roommates together on the road with Max, and in 1970, we decided to go in the studio and make a big band recording around the quartet that I had put together the year before. This quartet called Music Inc. And
Yes.
with the original guys in it was Steve Novosel on bass and Jimmy Hops on drums, who also is from DC. Both of them are from DC.
Mm.
Yeah. And after we made the recording and shopped it around, um, none of the independents, I remember in particular people like uh, Keith News and so on. They didn't seem like they wanted to have any interest in it, and we we went out to Detroit, you know, with the Music Inc. band because Stanley knew and was very friendly with some colleagues there, Kenny Cox, wonderful pianist, and Charles Moore, trumpet player,
Mm-hmm.
and they were bringing guys like us to play at the Detroit Museum,
Okay.
or whatever they call it. And they were doing that because they had formed a corporation, to fund it. And they called this corporation Strata. Moment. And, while we were there to do the concert and in talking with them, they said, uh, you guys, why don't you become our East, our Strata East?
Oh, wow. Okay.
York. And well, I thought about it. They gave us, you know, what they were doing. They were selling their little stock to their families and friends, and I I took a look at that when we got back home, and I said I don't have time to be going, you know, walking around to family and friends, selling stock, to get going with that sort of thing. But I like the name Strata.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to hyphenate it with East, and that will become the name of, you know, the record label if we put this thing out. And, I did a little research, on all the steps to do that, and just made the decision to, as they say, grab the bull by the horn and step on into that part of the music business, and the rest is history. I mean, um, the idea caught on. Then the great Clifford Jordan, came in
Oh,
with
yeah.
4 or 5 products. I mean, he had already done what we were then starting to do,
Mm-hmm.
but not to start a company. He just was sitting on, the things that he had recorded, and since I laid out a formula for getting the product into the market. He brought his things in, and it just sort of mushroomed from there. Adding on some wonderful and wild, interesting recordings, and including the Gil Scott Heron Went in America.
Yeah, you had like you guys put out, I guess, at least 50 recordings on that label by
About
different
60.
people. Yeah,
About
60? Okay. Okay. But yeah, Charles, getting back to that first recording you guys did, I mean, you had everyone on there. Jimmy Heath was on it, Curtis Fuller, big band. And I'm like, still to this day, when I listen to On the Nile, it's just some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. I'm like, boy, what was going on in Charles's mind when he arranged this? It was just incredible tune. I love it. The different solo parts, Cecil McBee's bass solo, your trumpet solo, Stanley solo, everybody was cooking on it. And I wanted to go back a little bit, someone that we just mentioned earlier. You also played with Max Roach, man. What was it like playing with Max?
Oh, for a trumpet player, that's the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I've said it on a number of occasions. You could have just put me in a box and some nails on it and laid me to rest. I mean that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, because Clifford Brown,
Yeah.
end of the world. And when I got the call, because I had, uh, on occasion I would call him because I got his number and he allowed me to call him and talk to him. And I say, think about me, if you ever start a new band. And I got a call while I was out in LA working with Gerald Wilson from him and said, "You've been worrying me. Get your tail back here. I'm starting this new band." And
Wow.
I hightailed it back home, and the rest is history. You know.
Yeah, yeah, he's one of the greats, man. Max is just a incredible drummer. What can you say about him? I was also going to ask you. You also hooked up and played with the late McCoy Tyner, who we just lost this year, and in my opinion, the most influential pianist of the last 60 years. I think you were on that recording, "The Song for My Lady," if I'm not mistaken. What was it like playing with McCoy, man?
Well, the John Coltrane quartet with McCoy. This was on and in our ears 24/7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when John died, I was in McCoy's first band, and he had me, Sam Rivers, and Herbie Lewis, and I forget the drummer's name now. He's from Baltimore too, I think. Can't think of his name now. Eric, Eric Gravatt. Does that ring a bell?
Oh yeah, I just had Eric on the show. Yeah, Eric Gravatt. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
great drummer.
And
Weather report too.
and then I brought Benny Maupin in.
Mm,
Ray Lewis was still there, and then McCoy brought in Freddie Waits, and that went on for about a year. You know, I remember specifically one of the concerts that we did at the famous Teresa Hotel, which has now been gentrified, of course, but
yeah.
this hotel was famous then, as you know, for so many reasons. And there was during the time when Muhammad Ali had refused to go into the military because of his religion, and they were giving him you know, a celebration in that famous ballroom, and McCoy was asked to play for that, and I got a chance to meet Muhammad up,
Oh
up there.
wow.
And so one of my memories with McCoy. Yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You also played with Sonny Rollins too, didn't you?
I did.
What was it like working with Sonny, man?
Out of the world, the end of the world.
Yeah.
you know,
Wow.
just got a call on the phone, and he said, "Well, it's your time." That's the way he was.
Oh wow. Wow.
Okay, I guess he heard about this, young fella around, and so I worked with him at the Village Vanguard. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He's another great one. I was going to ask you now, one of the things that I've been impressed with by you, just as much as your trumpet playing, is you as a composer. Have you written some really great stuff over the years? And you like to write a lot for big band too. Is that something that you enjoy doing more as opposed to just a small quartet, Charles? You enjoy really writing for big band because you've done some amazing work, man.
Well, you'll be surprised if I say not really. And what I mean by that, yeah, what I mean by that is everything that I've ever composed was for the small group. But
Mm,
that's what I grew up in: quartet, quintet, sextet. The original format of this music was small. Well, and of course, big band. If you're thinking about Fletcher and Duke and all the great uh, big bands, Count
yeah.
Basie, Basie, of course. But I never uh, thought in terms of wanting to have that as a part of my career. I just enjoyed listening to it.
Hmm.
My spare time, I think what got me writing is that we kids we were 24/7 with the music. So there was a place called Newbies on 116th Street between 8th and 7th Avenue, and a lot of local musicians would go there. I don't know if it was every night, but it was some nights during the week, and it was all big band, you know, and give them a chance to improve their reading chops and everything
Hmm.
like that. And so I would go by there and see if I could sit in, and so that got my ears into it. And then I was listening to Sonny Rollins's recording, that Grand Street thing that he did, with a big band with Ernie Wilkins did all of the arranging, and, and there wasn't a piano, if I remember, on there, and but the sounds were so great, and I said that's interesting. Uh, and then I started to put my ears on Slide Hampton, his use of no piano, with those great octets. And so this started to wear on my psychic, and so I started little by little to uh, make big band arrangements of my small group tunes just to have them. And the you know as I mentioned, I did the first one with Gerald Wilson, and then Stanley and I to launch the record label with you know the first recording. And then I really, in my spare time, started a big band,
Yeah.
writing. Just the joy of doing it, not saying, "Oh, well, this is what I want to do now," as big band. And then I did another big band in 1975 called Impact.
Hmm.
And then I left it alone, and I didn't pick it up to deal with it seriously until the Blue Note recording way here up into the millennium in 2005, because a trumpet player named David Weiss,
Hmm.
got me to, uh, you know, start to do the big band thing, and it caught on, and so I stayed with it for a few years, but never with the intention of continuing it. You know what I mean? Just the joy of finally getting a lot of the big band charts that I had written, actually played and recorded. And I did two. I did the one for Blue Note and one for High Note, which was live at the Blue Note. You know, so that's the story on the big band.
That's great, man. That's great. I love it. Now, Charles, you're also an educator too. Now, during the course,
I was.
oh, you don't teach anymore?
No, I mean after 27 years, man. I
Let
was
me,
20. I was 27 years. As a adjunct professor at the New School,
gotcha,
and in 2019, last year, you know that that was ended. And
gotcha.
It was great, because a lot of uh, really wonderful young musicians came through me, and
Yeah.
they are making really some great strides in this music, like Keon Harrell on the trumpet, David Guy on the trumpet, Kenyatta Beasley on the trumpet, uh, Marcus Strickland,
Mm. Yeah.
and his twin brother EJ, um, Ali, who was the drummer with the Lincoln Center, uh, Jazz Mayer Horn, Brianna Thomas, uh,
A lot of people, man.
Stafford Hunter,
Yeah.
Jasper. They all came through me, at the new school, and they're all where they are now.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, man. Yeah, I mean, your wealth of knowledge. I mean, I'm sure they must be like, wow, Charles Tolliver studying with him. Yeah, I wanted to ask you. You know, we were talking about trumpet players during the time period you came up in the '60s. Of course, you know Woody Shaw, yourself, Lee Morgan, and Freddie Hubbard. Were you friends with those guys, or did you guys hang out and spend time together, sharing ideas and maybe practicing together?
Oh, well, in my senior year in high school, in Manhattan, I don't know if they still do it now, but that circle line that goes around and takes the tourists around around the island, the Manhattan Island,
Mm-hmm.
used to have jazz concerts on there. You get on at 79th Street Boat House,
Yeah. Yeah.
and go around Manhattan and play. And I had heard that Charlie Persip, who we just lost,
Yeah.
was going to have a band on there. This was like around 1958 or something, which was the first year that Freddie Hubbard got to New York, 1958, 59. And so I went on that boat to hear that group, and Charlie Persip, he had in the band Freddie Hubbard and a wonderful tenor saxophone player, Roland Alexander.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he was just out of sight. John Orr again on bass, and Walter Davis Jr. On piano. And that was my first time to meet Freddie Hubbard, and we became lifelong uh, buddies and friends after that. And um, after I came back from Howard and came back home and decided I was going to really go at this, Freddie Hubbard didn't know that I, you know, was serious about the trumpet. I guess he knew I was playing the trumpet, because I told him, play the trumpet.
Right.
But I never took any lessons from him or anything. I just liked to hang out with him. You know.
Gotcha.
So when I got back, I said, I'm gonna really try and go at this, and he encouraged me, and so I knew him right at the beginning of his career.
Right.
And um, when I started to break in with Jackie, Lee Morgan, of course, all of those greats, they would know when there was a new trumpet player around. And Lee Morgan came to hear me play at one of those places on the Lower East Side, and that meant something to me because Lee Morgan wasn't the type of guy who would come and be that way.
Yeah.
And I got to know him, and didn't get a chance to. Woody Shaw and I didn't physically meet until I was in LA working with Gerald Wilson.
Okay.
And that's when, we had a chance to, just talk with each other because he was with Horace Silver at the time. And he was more or less caught in the same vacuum as I. When Blue Note was sold by Alpha Lion, there wasn't a place for us to do a leader date. You know what I mean? And I don't think Woody got to do a leader date until in the '70s. When of course the great opportunity opened up for him, with CBS. But I was going to take the bull by the horn by 1970. You know, and so yeah, that's those three trumpet players I got to know really well, and I got to know Donald Byrd really well, and I got to know Kenny Dorham, who is a big hero.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Really got to know him well when I first broke in
What about
because
Booker Little?
I got to see him once.
Okay.
Freddie Hubbard and I, we went. Freddie Hubbard and Booker Little were already playing in Slide Hampton's band.
Mm.
Uh, Booker was playing at the famous Wilt Chamberlain's Small's Paradise because it was Small's Paradise first, and then Wilt Chamberlain, he took over the ownership of it, and it was a fabulous club,
Yeah.
a couple of blocks away from Count Basie's bar, and it had a horseshoe bar where you had this great view no matter where you sat, and a stage which swung around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Booker Little had his group in there, and I was to see him, for the first and last time because he died shortly thereafter. Yeah.
Talent. Did you ever meet Miles Davis?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My meeting of Miles Davis was doing my first meeting of him was during his 7 years he hiatus. He took off.
Oh, right. That was, yeah, the '70s. Right, right, right.
Yeah, he decided he wasn't going to, do anything with Columbia until they acted right for him. And so I really got a chance to meet him and talk with him, and so yeah.
Fantastic. Hey, now, Charles, I wanted to talk to you about this latest recording, man. You put out about couple months ago. Connect. Hey, man, fantastic recording. Blue Soul is my favorite jam on there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. And I noticed you still hook up with those two guys, Lenny White and Buster Williams. I always see you with those guys, man. And they both have been on the show
Lately,
too.
yeah, lately.
Yeah,
Yeah, that started with the celebration of the Paperman,
yeah.
All-Star reunion thing in 50th anniversary at the Charlie Parker Jazz Festival, and Buster brought Lenny, to me and said, like this ought to be it, you know, if we're gonna go out with anybody. So yeah, this recording came off of a tour we did late last year in November to Europe, and coming through London. I made this recording for this young uh, British label there, and well,
It's excellent, man. It's a very, very good recording. I've been listening to it a lot. And like I said, Blue Soul, that was a song that really struck me. And it just had almost like that classic Charles Tolliver sound, that trumpet. I was like, oh, man, because you got that nice fat tone, man. I've always loved to listen to you play. But no, the CD swings, it grooves. It's fantastic. And I was going to ask you, in your spare time when you're home, just chilling out, relaxing, what type of music do you listen to, Charles? Who do you listen to when you're home? Or what do you playing? If I were to come over to your house right now and just chill out with you, what would Charles Tolliver have on? What would he be playing?
I would have on Pursuance from Love Supreme.
Oh, man. Yeah, I love Supreme is just one of the
If,
most
if, if
important.
okay, so for the younger generation, and I love most mostly everything that they are attempting to do,
Yeah.
but the the going to whatever church it is, uh, feeling when you put Pursuance on, that's that's the culmination of this art form.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, every track that they did, of the many recordings. But for me, if I want to get going, I'll put Pursuance track on. You know what I'm talking about, right?
yeah, yeah. I wanted to also ask you, during that time period when he made, Love Supreme and, 64, 65, 63, early in his in the 60s, did you catch Coltrane a lot with that band with Elvin and those guys play live?
Every night we could.
Oh, wow. What was that experience
At,
like, man? I've heard so
at,
many
at,
incredible stories.
well, at the half note, it was like going to church, whatever God that you pray to, you know. Uh, that was what that was. This was God on the altar, the four of them,
Yeah,
and uh, sometimes there wouldn't be a dry eye in that place because it was so mesmerizing. It's hard to explain the viscerality, of that music.
yeah, yeah. Charles, have you ever worked with Wayne Shorter before?
Well, I knew Wayne, and he gave me a little gig, when I first got started, a little party gig.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's a
Wayne,
great,
he's a genius.
yeah, great composer, man. Brilliant. He is.
Yeah, he's a genius.
Yeah. And listen, I wanted to ask you, you know, what, well, let's looking forward, we're thinking about the COVID-19, and at least in my area, they're moving to phase 3 and they're starting to open things up gradually. And I know you probably miss performing and getting out there. Do you live stream concerts
Well,
of your,
not yet. There hasn't been an opportunity where the precautions and everything that would be necessary to do it, um, where we are gathered together, distant,
right, right.
and some of the guys are a little reticent about doing it just yet. They'd rather it get into that phase 3 or 4 where they don't have to wear masks. You know what I mean?
I got you. I
Yeah.
got you.
So for horn players, of course, we can't have the mask on when we're playing. So we'll just have to wait this out, Preston. There's nothing else that we can do.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta,
I mean, there are the streaming things going on,
hmm
depending on how well it's the
yeah,
event is
yeah,
put out there. It's for the folks. It can work. I mean, actually, it's working quite well uh, with a number of artists. So it is something that can be done and is being done. Yeah.
yeah. Now, I was gonna say, I know in your spare time you hang out with the fellas. I saw you on Lenny's Loft with Vince Wilburn and Buster and all you guys, man. What is it
Well,
like? You guys just get together and have conversation, man, like once a week or so?
yeah. Well, then it gives us something to do on a Friday evening. Can't go out to a club.
Right,
So
right.
he has wonderful discussions, very serious discussions. The idea is to have younger generation of musicians and uh, older musicians uh, toss about ideas and the future,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is going and is going to impact them as the newer purveyors of the art form. So
Yeah.
it's not just hanging out, electronically. It's also informative and very helpful. Excuse me, for the younger generation.
Right, right. Well, man, I tell you, I look forward to when this thing is over so I can see Charles Tolliver again, my hero. Catching you in Baltimore, it was like 6 or 7 months ago, man. I was just floored, just because, like I said, I've been listening to you for decades, and
We were
I
we
was
were
telling,
lucky. We were
I was
lucky,
lucky.
man. No, we were lucky. I mean, think about it. Shoulder to shoulder, gathered together, eating together, drinking together,
Yeah, man.
talking together. Was the last time of normalcy, if you think about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Because not too long after that, yeah, a couple months or whatever after that is when it hit. But it was just a pleasure for me, man, because I had been talking to Doc, and I said, you know what, I need to get, you guys need to get that band down here, because I've seen Buster and of course
Right.
Lenny multiple times, but I hadn't seen you. I said, man, this guy's one of my biggest heroes. So they made it happen, and it was
Yeah.
a joy for me, and I thank you so much for it,
I
man.
thank you. I thank you for making it
Thank you,
happen.
brother. Thank you. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much today for being on Jazz Talk. It's been a pleasure. You're just a cool dude, man. I so love and respect you. Hang on, I'm about to close out the show. Well,
Okay.
you've heard it from the great Charles Tolliver. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.